development that you was responsible yourself, and what technology you're using?
Sure. Thank you for asking. My name is Amarjit. I am having 7+ years of experience. Currently, I am working the technology which I have like Java with a Spring Boot, microservices, a Spring Cloud component as a backend. Some of the exposures as a front end as a Angular 9. Also have a good experience in AWS Cloud Services as a like a multiple services I use for the deployment and development for the AWS. Apart from this, I have also good experience in database like which is like Oracle SQLs and also Mongo NoSQLs. Coming for the DevOps, I have also good experience for the some of the part of DevOps while we are developing applications like Apache, Maven, Jenkins, Jira, GitHub, ELK, Splunk, and all. So domain basis, mostly I worked on most of the domain like as a banking, telecom, e-commerce, and health insurance project. So my role and responsibility basically like to manage the applications like to develop a microservices based applications. So the same technology which I worked, and like last project which I worked on like a health insurance project. So their health insurance like managing a project where multiple customer can come and take a insurance, any type of insurance. So while users will take any insurance, then we have a internal process that will, once order will be created, then that payment will happen. Like before the payment we need to check what type of slots is there any particular store is located in nearby locations, and how much will be the payment, and if any users have any discount or redemption options will be there, that we have to calculate and we'll send it to the customer. Apart from this, once users will do the payment and all, then there will be some notifications, so that notifications will come for the customer either email or messaging. So these type of things we need to develop. So for that we use mostly REST template call, or maybe some of the third party API call will have any asynchronous communications by using microservices and Kafka development. Apart from this, like once we are developing any services, so that will go for the different microservices, or maybe different environment. So once it will go for the different environment, so there will be some deployment will happen once. If everything is fine, then we need to deploy the same in production. While we are going for the production, we need to stay on call, because here we are following agile. So my role and responsibility, we are following agile. Based on the agile, whatever the sprint task will be defined, we need to work on the particular Jira. And once the Jira development task will be completed, then that will be go for the different environment deployment. So once deployment will go for the production, we need to take on the call and check all the configuration, what are the configurations changes, and all validation security is proper or not. If yes, then we need to deploy the same. If everything is good fine, then we need to check all the request response as per the production. If anything will happen, then we need to do some hotfix deployment. So that type of things we have urgent immediately we will perform. So that type of work we are doing on daily basis for the different project.
Can you how deeply you utilize Kafka as a technology in your web development projects?
Yes. Yeah, so Kafka, which I used like as I told, we have a multiple microservices communications, either e-commerce or health insurance or maybe other. So if users is taking any type of order, so that orders will be created based on the order ID, and after that immediately based on the respective microservices, like what type of slot is there, where which store is located for the particular customer, so that we can deliver immediately for the particular customer based on the order. And also what is the like payment, or what are the notifications need to be required to send. So these type of respective microservices which need to be called to check the orders based on the order ID, that will work. So here what we are doing, we are creating a producer and consumer. So order microservice, once order is generating, they will produce the data in the Kafka cluster, and other microservices will take the data and immediately he will perform the operations. Instead of directly calling or waiting for other microservices and all, they have a asynchronous communications through the messaging. So instead of sync communication, we will do asynchronous communications through the Kafka. So that type of work we are doing, we are creating consumer producers based on the topic we will need to define and send the response.
Okay. But did you work with any Kafka Streams APIs or not? Or is your Microsoft services being in linked to the Kafka?
Yeah, we use Spring Cloud buses. So the Spring Cloud buses is the Stream API which is used for the cloud. So that I used what will be the source and sink. Based on that, we have to declare the Kafka messaging.
Okay. And are you was using the that you set up the Apache? Was it the Apache Kafka, or what? Is it that you work with Apache Kafka, or is it was it that you how that you set it up yourself, or that you just utilize it, the platform?
Yeah, the platform mostly that will be given by the DevOps teams, but we have ideas like how we will set up and all. We'll have a portal there. We have to set up and mention all those things, but that is developed by the DevOps team.
Okay. Um, but I think it's just that you sent, but I understand Kafka, and maybe you must help me. I get my involvement. I'm not so technical, but my involvement with Kafka was with data streaming. Was you involved with that anyway, or was it not with data streaming?
Yeah, in Kafka, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that we have involved.
What was your involvement, and what project that you work with the data streaming with Kafka?
Yeah, in data streaming, yeah. So mostly what we are doing, most of whatever the real data is generating. So real data we are capturing. So that capturing, how we will capture is we have a API call. Through that we need to capture the real data, and after that we'll have to process this data to cluster, and clusters, based on the clusters, if respective other services need to process the data, then they will consume. So that we are analyzing the real time data through the streaming, Kafka streaming.
Okay. Okay, but you was not involved to operate and provide that and set it up to get real life data streaming.
Yeah.
You just okay, okay. Um, f- what was the data volumes that you work with in your on your projects? How big was the data volumes that you handled in your projects?
Where in Kafka?
Yes.
Data volume depends on I think data value will be depends on the requirement. Mostly will have a depends on the requirements, but mostly which we have seen default size limit will be 1 MB.
Yes. Okay. Um, what was your uh, in your development when you do it? Where did you ever come across that you can't solve a thing in real time, that you get data through in real time, and how did you resolve it that you can real time data through utilizing the Kafka interface of the Kafka platform?
Okay, real time data how we are utilizing.
Yeah, for me, it's just more, what was your biggest challenge that you have come across in your development career? That what problem, and that caused quite that you had to think quite well how to resolve a challenge that you initially thought it was you can that was like this, but then you come up across that is more challenging, and how you resolve a challenge problem.
Yeah, mostly which I have seen, we have a UI through the we can check the Kafka details and all. So what we have seen mostly the data will be not sync up properly. Like some of the time, like producers as generating the data, then consumer is not consuming because in mediators there is just some issues. So that offsets as not generating, or maybe that replications are not working properly in real time, which we have seen. So for that we'll have a we need to mention that uh, based on the partitions we have to create. But most of the times we seen like if large amount of data which is coming, and that if you haven't defined any partitions and all properly, then that will be there based on that. So we have to create a partitions, key sets and all, and a proper topic name that we have to define. And also we have seen like somewhere like a configuration level, some of the configurations was not proper, or maybe so that time the data will be like mismatched or maybe not generated, that we analyzes through the logs. So once we will generate the log, through that we can check all those things.
Okay. Do you have any projects that you was involved that you utilized the Kafka API architecture or not?
Kafka mostly I use like to consume the data and process the data with real time.
Okay, but Kafka, but they have APIs to get they have open APIs. That you have any experience in your development, or that you have engaged with Kafka API with that architecture, or was you not involved in that integration?
Yeah, I already involved in this Kafka development.
Okay, and what was your exact task to do in the Kafka development?
Mostly my task was like we need to process real-time data and we have to analyze the data. So how this you real-time some online like e-commerce order is generating, and what are the demanded things which is searching on this our applications. And so for that we need to analyze the real-time data by using Kafka and Spring Data Cloud.
Okay, but somewhere you need to set up your Kafka to
Yes.
process that data. That's where I
Yes.
want to ask, what was your involvement, was you involved to set up the Kafka to process those data through, because there's through the relevant APIs and all that stuff, or not?
Yeah, Kafka setups and all. Mostly, what we have to do. First, we have like while we are developing any Kafka configurations related. So if we have like a Spring Boot application. So that the Spring Boot applications will have a like controller, which and based on the controller, will send the message either maybe Kafka template. So that based on the Kafka template, first we have to install the Kafka zookeepers and mention the configuration in application.yaml file. Run the Kafka zookeepers in your local, create a topic, and while Spring Boot application will create or send the message, so based on the topic which will be initialized, and that will be send it to the consumer and producer.
Okay, okay. Any questions that Amar, that you want to ask me?
Like what type of project you are hiring, and is that
It's a telecommunication. It's for a telecommunication company,
Mhm.
and that is probably for the digital. It's for the digital initiative. So that will be probably an e-commerce platform that the different digital partners can connect to that platform.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, so that is the challenge that I have, is to have strong Kafka Microsoft service uh, experience.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Okay. What are you currently busy with as a project?
Currently, I'm working with this like a Java with a Spring Boot microservices, a Spring Cloud component as a Kafka, and also I have a bus Spring Cloud buses and all which you are using. So while we are using that AWS Cloud services, we have a configure. Through that, we need to manage the data. So mostly we are processing real-time data here.
Okay. And you use Springboard for your
Yes.
platform.
Yes.
Okay. 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 No, thanks a lot. I will be busy with a quick session, and by tomorrow I will, because the next interview, if you're successful, is with the customer, and then we take it from there.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Thanks
Yeah,
a lot, Tamar.
yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Nice talking to
Bye
you.
bye.